my foot on the floor and I'm not lifting till I see God or a checkered flag.
Hello, and welcome back to episode 4 of Racing Thoughts and IndyCar Podcast. I'm Megan Dennis.
And I'm Megan Taylor.
And we are back with off-week content here, where it's an off week of racing, but boy, has it not been an off week by any means.
There's been a lot that's been happening, so cannot wait to get into all of that. And yeah, get right into it.
Yeah, I guess we'll start off with what came out kind of early in the week, which is, of course, IndyCar is now partnered up with Fox for the 2025 and beyond season. I'm sure there is a contract end date to it. I'm not entirely sure what it is off the top of my head. Initially, wasn't thrilled, but I guess we can kind of dive into the good, the bad, the indifferent of what this new partnership really kind of means.
Yeah, so we have IndyCar, which is now going to be broadcasted on Fox, which is now going to be like a national network television station. So a good part about it is that we are going to get all of the races on like cable TV, which is going to be really good for kind of like getting people into the series. Like it's going to be much more accessible because previously it's just been on like Peacock and you can get it on the IndyCar app and stuff. So yeah.
And occasionally like NBC or USA, and it's just like filtering networks. Yeah,
but at least now with this Fox deal, we get all of the races on the channel. Like it's going to be consistent, so like if you just happen to have thrown it on once, you're going to be able to find it again like pretty easily. So that's a really good thing that we see is going to be happening with this deal. I think another really cool thing is that Indy Next is going to be on TV as well, which is like the junior series for IndyCar. So we get to see a lot of like the young talent get their shot at, you know, making a name for themselves, and it's going to be a little bit easier for them. So that's really cool too. And there's a lot of young talent in the Indy Next series that I'm very excited to see kind of grow, because that's been a challenge to see as well. Like it's hard to find those races. I've really been able to only watch it when it's been like recaps or highlights or anything. And I don't know if that's just like a location based thing or what, but I've never been able to watch an Indy Next race unless I've been at the race itself. And that's no fun. I want to watch the young guys. So that's cool.
And speaking on that, I saw something interesting too on how like a lot of the Indy Next and like kind of the karting group that feeds into it are really excited, because with this now being on TV and with it being on like Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2 and everything, they're going to be able to really kind of promote sponsorship a little bit better and be able to like sell those rights in a way they haven't been able to. So like the level of talent that we are seeing in those junior feeder series are probably just going to increase because now they have the money to be able to back it in a way they haven't ever before now.
Yeah, that is one of the unfortunate things about racing and motorsport in general. It's just a money machine that is truly driven by it. So we have that going for it. One of the things that I noticed that someone was talking about is that the broadcast, allegedly, I don't have confirmation on this, so don't yell at me if I end up lying. This is just what I've seen, is that the broadcast is still going to be produced by IMS Productions, so the quality of it should remain the same, which is nice because, you know, that's always kind of a question when this kind of stuff happens, when you get like a major broadcast buys into something and it changes everything about it. So hopefully if IMS Productions is still kind of like in charge of it, it's not really going to change. It's really just going to be broadcast on the channel and not like done a 180 on how it is produced and how it is shown out to the world. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I would love for that to be true, because I think IMS Productions does a really good job about how they broadcast it and how they show it. So I would love to see that.
Yeah. Also, the bleed over from, because right now it's seeming that everything's going to go either IndyCar into NASCAR or NASCAR into IndyCar, I think is going to be really, really beneficial in just the sense of like maybe you'll get those NASCAR fans who weren't into IndyCar catching the end of a race or the beginning of a race and being like, well, I'll check it out.
I think the only thing that's going to be weird about that, and I might be jumping the gun a little bit, is like Well, what happens with delays? Like if a race goes way longer than expected because of yellows or reds or something, or like there's a rain delay. I don't know how that's going to work in terms of production and like what time things are supposed to start and then be broadcast. Cause, obviously it's not like NASCAR and Indy are going to be racing in the same place. So it's not like, oh, if IndyCar, which is going to be before the NASCAR race, has a 3-hour rain delay, that's going to impact, oh, NASCAR is going to have a 3-hour rain delay because of the same thing. No, that's not going to be the case. So, like, I'm interested to see how that's going to work because I'm not a NASCAR girly. I don't hate it or dislike it. I just never watched it. So I'm like, I don't want my IndyCar races that I genuinely want to watch be impacted by, oh, well, NASCAR had a race beforehand. So now I'm stuck watching this because they had the delay. So they had the right to the airtime first and all of this other stuff. So I don't know how that's going to go. So it's going to be interesting to see. There are people who make way more money than me who are in charge of those decisions. So I really hope that they have some sense into figuring out how that's all going to work. But that's one of my main concerns there too.
And then we don't know our broadcasting crew yet. I like the NBC broadcasting crew, especially James Hinchcliffe, massive fan of. I will be extremely disappointed if Hinch isn't kept on to be able to continue to cover. And he put out a post last Friday, saying like he doesn't know what the future holds. So it kind of seems like it's either going to be Hinch or Townsend Bell, not both, which is what we've had during this whole NBC deal. I guess it'll be a watch this space to kind of see what happens with that one, but definitely between the two, give me Hinch every day of the week.
Absolutely. I mean, I love them as a duo. I think they're really iconic, and it's just been a lot of fun to see them and hear their thoughts because they both have a lot of really great insight into things. But yeah, no, I'm right there with you with Hinch. I would love nothing more than to see him be the one that transfer over. I mean, ideally, I would have liked them both to transfer over, but alas, can't have that. But yeah, it'll be interesting, and we're going to keep an eye out on those announcements to see who's actually going to be doing the commentating. So can't wait for that.
And then really my only other issue with it going to Fox, and probably why my immediate reaction was very unhappy. I have come around because I think seeing that like the fact that it's not going to be on a major cable network for every single race is huge for the growth of the sport.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is, for better or worse, NBC is partnered with Peacock, which means for someone like me who doesn't have cable, doesn't have, Hulu TV, any of those, like to be able to watch that, like using Peacock is the way that I've been able to watch all the races.
Yeah.
Fox, as it currently stands, is the only like platform that doesn't have a streaming service at current. I have heard that there's going to be one coming out, but like, who knows how much that's going to cost, who knows how easily accessible it's going to be, all of that. So, but as someone who does consume through streaming services, I don't like that that's immediately going away. And that's immediately something I'm like, well, there goes my main means of like watching the sport.
Yeah. And I think that's been the reaction from a lot of people, is that accessibility that we have had because of Peacock and NBC and stuff, that going away immediately is just like, well, now how am I going to watch it? Because, I mean, you said it yourself, you don't have cable. I don't either. I have Hulu Live. So, like, I'm able to watch it through that. But even with Hulu, like, Fox is so inconsistent with what it shows me. And it really is location based. So the amount of times like I've tried to watch like football games or soccer games or even like Champions League games for soccer, and it's just I don't have access to location based games. Like, when I was living in Baltimore and I was trying to watch the Patriots, I couldn't do that because I was in Baltimore, and so I'm automatically being shown Ravens or the Commanders or something like that. So I'm worried that for me, because motorsport is not big in New England at all, really, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to get it, which is going to be awful. So I'm right there with you, even though I have the streaming services that can show Fox, I don't know. So that has left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. Like, yeah, sure, there's a lot of good things that are coming from this deal, but it's not as accessible now as it used to be, and I don't know how that is going to play out in the long run.
Yeah, everything's saying that like there's going to be a streaming service coming in September that's going to be able to cover everything. So I guess we'll just continue to watch and see what happens. So good of it is national coverage on one of the major 4 networks for every single race.
And that's
Downside,
including the 500 too. Like
yes.
the 500 qualifying and the actual race itself being broadcast on Fox is going to be huge for them.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm honestly impressed that Fox has agreed to air the 500 quali, considering that is like 8 hours long. So, I guess we'll see. There's a lot of pros and cons to it. So I guess the only thing we can say is like we're just going to have to see how it plays out in real time and see if there's any changes that are going to be made, but who knows?
And along with that, nearly simultaneously, we got the Fox partnership announced, which had been rumored for a couple of weeks beforehand of happening. But we also got the 2025 schedule. And it's busy, for, I guess, lack of a better word for it.
Yeah, it is something. That is for sure.
So they've definitely condensed the schedule, not in the number of races, but just in the number of kind of race weekends happening, in that we start St. Pete in March, but we're ending in August. So it's ending a month earlier than normal. And like you look at July, it's 5 races
Yep.
in 4 weekends.
Yeah, you get Mid-Ohio, you get Iowa Speedway race 1, then Iowa Speedway race 2, then you get Toronto, Laguna Seca, and then you get a brief respite before going to Portland in August. I'm like,
Yep.
that is actually crazy. I don't know how they're going to genuinely do the month of July. Like, that's just as busy as the month of May.
Well, and it's like, if you look at earlier the schedule too, I mean, you go back up to April, the only race that's in April is Long Beach.
Yeah.
So like there is a break there, which I saw people mad that like Barber falls in the beginning of May, and it's like, well, May's supposed to be for Indianapolis. And like, I get that, but also I feel like that's just probably how the weeks just happen to fall. But it's also, it's a weird gap of like hardly anything in April, but we're going to pack July completely out.
Yeah, I feel like I wish I could have been a fly on the wall during those meetings to try and figure out the rationale behind this. And I genuinely don't know.
Well, and I feel like it has to be broadcasting. This has to be Fox. And I mean, I don't know if it's a NASCAR schedule stuff that's happening in April, because I don't know what their schedule normally looks like. But that's the only thing that would logically make sense to me, is that there's just too much overlap with TV, where it's, if we're pushing for this national like presence, then we're going to have to compromise on when we have availability on the weekend, which I guess is just kind of nature of sport these days. Like you see it all the time with stuff on ESPN. And I mean, the fact of the matter is we only have so many major sports conglomerates that are showing live sports, that it does kind of put a delay on when can be shown what. And everything, you look at football schedules, you only get those a week or two ahead of time, because it's based on, this is who's going to be popular, who we want to see. Well, we're going to put them in national time slot, as opposed to, I can only speak on college football, but it's like we have 5 out of our 10 games this upcoming year that are under a flex schedule. So anywhere between 2:30 and 7 p.m. could be kickoff, because we just don't know which game is going to be big.
Yeah, that's fair. So I was thinking like, like the regular season football games, like it makes sense that they're stopping in August so that NFL season can have their shine and everything. But yeah, no, definitely that makes a lot of sense too. So,
yeah, when the NFL, that is probably a factor of why they have to end in August, is because 100%. Fox has all those Sunday rights to those games. And so it's just like, they're going to keep those slots. Of course they're going to, and as they should.
Absolutely. But like, that doesn't make it make sense as to why they're packing July the way that they are, because again, like you mentioned, there's such a gap in the beginning of the season, and I'm honestly a little concerned with how this is going to affect the drivers. Like, we talk about it in Formula One all the time, of them having an insane amount of races and like the triple headers and the double header and like all of these things. This is insane to pack July and August this way. in the middle of the summer. Like I don't get it. Like I feel so bad for these drivers because it's going to be hellish for them, truly. Like it's going to be awful. So I would have loved to have seen a few more races happen at the beginning of the season because I think that would have been a lot better in terms of like, oh, marketing it, of like, oh, here's this really cool thing. Next week, you're going to have the same thing. Maybe slow it down in the middle of the summer a little bit, give some breaks, spread it out a little bit. But I don't know.
I don't know. And then I guess this will tie into kind of what we were going to discuss next, but it also means that we're not going to see IndyCar drivers going to Le Mans next year because it's an overlapping weekend. And I know like Alex Palou, I saw on Twitter, like he is one of those that's like genuinely upset about it because he races Le Mans. He went this year, he enjoys it, and now it's not an option because IndyCar is his job at the end of the day. I mean, so when it's time to go do your job, you're not getting a choice in that matter.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure there's also an F1 race that same weekend as well.
There
so
is.
It's like, you know, you get the whole trifecta of it. You get Le Mans, you get Indy, you get F1. But at what point is that now starting to detract from each other of like, all right, well, you have to pick one to support at that time. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm gonna be a little more inclined to watch the IndyCar race, but it's just kind of like I would love to be able to watch F1 and Le Mans that same weekend too. So that's taking viewership away from all of the other series. So it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it'll be one, you know, we'll see how it plays out, what all that looks like and everything. But
I'd be interested to hear what the driver's perspective is too about the schedule being as kind of compact as it is. Like I'm sure they're not thrilled about it, but what can they say? It's kind of set in stone already.
Yeah, no, I think that'll definitely be interesting because it's like it's the trade-off of I think a lot of them are very excited for this kind of more national coverage, and as they rightfully should be.
Yeah.
But it's also that's a lot of off time that they have to plan for now for the rest of the year on top of the fact of just it's busy. As a understatement, it's busy, and I could not imagine like what it's going to be like come like next August at the end of it, where they're probably not going to want to see a car for quite a while. Okay, so speaking of Le Mans and what's not going to happen next year, I guess connecting that up, we had quite a few drivers, IndyCar drivers, participating in Le Mans this weekend. So Alex Palou, Scott Dixon, Romain Grosjean, Kiffin Simpson, and Nolan Siegel all participated with various teams. He is on my list.
You skipped him. Come on, that's the second week in a row we've skipped.
Sorry to former number 6 drivers for Arrow McLaren. It's not personal. I love you.
First. We'll talk about that in a second. But yes, we did have a lot of Indy drivers who participated in Le Mans, which is the whole reason that I watched it this year. I have never watched Le Mans before. I watched Ford vs. Ferrari, the movie, and that's about my knowledge of this race. And it was so overwhelming. I don't understand endurance racing in the slightest. I know that there were 3 different categories to it, and all of our drivers were kind of spread out throughout the 3 kind of categories there. I don't have words for it. It felt like just trying to throw wet spaghetti at a wall. And that was kind of how my brain processed it. There was a moment where the graphics on the screen had glitched and it was like all of the drivers had overlapped on each other. And I was like, this is how my brain feels. So if anyone can explain Le Mans to me in a way that doesn't make my brain feel like it's burning, I would greatly appreciate it. But the biggest takeaway is Nolan Siegel won his category, which is huge. So shout out to Nolan. I think my first introduction to him was Indy Next, but didn't really see much of him until, the 500 when he had a very interesting qualifying and whole situation. But I think my biggest thing with him was hearing and seeing the reactions to like him being the one that was bummed, and everyone was like, no, you're gonna see more of this kid. He's incredibly talented. Like you're gonna know his name. And everyone was just kind of like, yeah, brushed it off. And then lo and behold, this kid comes in and wins Le Mans. I'm like, holy smokes. So, okay, we'll pay attention a little bit more. And shout out Nolan. That's a huge accomplishment. Proud of you, dude. Love that.
Well, and knowing his name has been the theme of the last 24 hours, that's for sure.
Do you want to fill us in on what has been surrounding a young Nolan Siegel right now?
Start off with saying I think it's a very good thing that we delayed our recording by a day, both so we didn't record early and miss this, but also I think I just needed a moment to take it all in. This is nothing against Nolan Siegel. I'm going to start off with saying that.
Yeah.
But I am not happy with the current situation that is going on at Arrow McLaren with the number 6 car. For those who have been living under a rock for the last 24 hours, in the world of IndyCar, earlier in the day yesterday, there were rumors going around of like, there's big news coming. And, it's just a lot of orange kept being mentioned. And I'm like, okay, here I am hoping that it means Alex Rossi just signed his new deal and we're about to get a Rossi contract extension. Not so fast. The news that we ended up getting about 2 p.m. Central is that Nolan Siegel has signed a multi-year contract starting this weekend at Laguna Seca to drive in the number 6 Papaya car for Arrow McLaren, which now means that Theo Pourchaire is out of the drive, at least as it currently stands. I personally don't think it's a good look for McLaren as a whole. Whatever powers to be ended up making the choice that goes into it, whether it was Gavin Ward, whether it's Zach Brown, Tony Kanaan, whoever was involved in this, and I guess at some level probably all of the above was involved in it. You've had 6 drivers in 3 cars, not including David Malukas this year. It's not a good look if you're looking to grow for the long term.
Yeah, it's getting really difficult to defend McLaren here because, this isn't the first time that McLaren as a whole, like McLaren Motorsport has done this. They did this with Danny Rick in F1 to bring Oscar Piastri in. Okay, fine, that worked out for them. But now they're doing it repeatedly and not giving the driver any sort of chance to kind of like figure it out. And it's just like a rotating carousel of drivers at this point. It's like, oh, who's going to be in the number 6 McLaren this time? No one knows, and like, it's such a shame because you had Fro who had such success in the number 6 car previously, but then all of a sudden there was the legal issues with Alex Palou. So then, okay, Palou wasn't going to be in the car anymore. And then you had David Malukas. He broke his wrist, couldn't drive. So then you had Callum Ilott. They kind of pushed him out, it seems like. And then they had Theo. Okay, great. They pushed Theo out despite the fact that he was supposed to finish the season. And now they pushed him out and it's Nolan Siegel. So I'm hesitant just because Nolan also was competing in the Indy Next series. So I'm like, I would have loved to have seen him finish out that series for the year. That way he could maybe get a little bit more experience. Not to say that he's inexperienced, because did do the Indy 500 qualifying. He did step in when what's-his-face was pushed out for a race. I'm not even going to grace with the name. So he did step in, but he kind of, in my opinion, had like an unremarkable session that weekend. Like, it wasn't great. It wasn't like, oh my God, we need to get this kid. It was just okay. Like, he finished, had no issues. So it was unremarkable at best, but not in a negative way, if you know what I mean. It was just kind of like happened. So I'm like, I really want to know why they are so gung-ho on him. Like, yeah, sure, he did win Le Mans, and you just heard me praise him for it. That's an incredible accomplishment. But how is that going to be translating into a full-time IndyCar seat that I don't fully know if he's ready for it yet? So it'll be interesting to see. And poor Pato and Rossi, they have just had so many teammates that it's really just got to be like, who's going to show up and be my teammate this time?
Just a carousel of brunette men coming through.
Listen, we all know Zach Brown has a type. Should be concerning that Zach Brown's type is also my type, but...
You made the joke before I could.
I really don't know. It's really hard to defend McLaren on this one, and I say this as a fan of McLaren, and I say this as a fan of the drivers in McLaren. So I'm just like, I don't know if this is the right call. I really hope it works out for Nolan, but it makes me nervous that he's going to get the same treatment as everybody else who has been in that number 6 car.
Well, I have 2 pieces of, I guess, speculative fact that I think kind of feed into the narrative of why this happened. You're questioning that too.
Tell me all the tea.
So I want to say AutoNation, but I may have the wrong company. Whatever car that Nolan Siegel drove for Le Mans is not under the McLaren umbrella. It is under the Zach Brown umbrella. So he has a partnership or ownership or something with whatever team that Nolan Siegel drove for in Le Mans. So that initially is kind of kicking off some sort of connection there. And it also is apparently that Nolan Siegel's family comes from major money. That's motorsport in and of itself.
Yeah.
But this isn't. David Malukas also comes from major money. David Malukas did not buy his seat. And I'm not saying that Nolan Siegel did, but I'm saying that maybe, and we probably will never know what the actual truth of this matter is, but could it be, okay, Theo Pourchaire had this contract supposedly through the end of this year. Did he get bought out of his contract for that seat? Maybe. I don't know. And that's purely speculative on my part of just kind of putting pieces together. There's definitely a Zach Brown connection here. We saw TK on Nolan's wall during bump day. Like, they clearly see some sort of talent, and maybe it was just a notion of, with it being a hot driver's market this year, like, we need to jump on him so we don't lose him, sort of thing, a la, Alpine with Oscar Piastri going to McLaren. I don't know, but it wouldn't shock me if there was some sort of like money exchange hands, and it's kind of, we're going to put him in a seat.
Yeah. And I do know, and this was talked about on one of the 100 Days to Indy episodes. So, like, this is very well known. And it's also been well documented in media and outlets and stuff like that. With Alex Palou breaking his contract and all of the legal battles that are going on, one of the major things that Zach Brown was talking about is the fact that Palou backing out meant that all of the sponsors that were supposed to come with Palou were no longer there. So there was a lot of development, I think, that was happening as a result of the money that they were supposed to be getting from Palou. And then all of a sudden they don't have that anymore. I wonder if they're like, that is kind of part of the reason why. I'm not throwing this out there as like a accusatory thing, but I'm just wondering if this is like a little bit of the ramifications of Palou backing out, because they're still dealing with all of this in terms of courts and legal fees, and they're suing Palou for like millions of dollars as a result of sponsorships. So I wonder if maybe them getting drivers that have a little bit more money to be able to provide for them is a direct result of that. I don't know.
Well, and it's also feeding into rumors that apparently have been floating around for the last 6 months or so that like McLaren may be losing their title sponsorship in Aero, which I guess is another thing to continue to watch. So yeah, it might be really down to they need money.
Which is crazy because they have a kind of like a brand at this point of being the one with money. Like, again, you look at the 100 Days of Indy episode that happened season 2 that highlights McLaren. They proudly talk about, oh, we're putting so much money into this team. Like, we're paying all of these people like way higher salaries, which is, one, fantastic. Love that. But two, they have like state-of-the-art technology that they're buying with all of this, which again is great, but is it running out? Are they just like bleeding themselves dry here? And they're just trying to figure it out of like, all right, cover our butts a little bit and get some drivers who can pay a little bit more.
I don't know. And like we said, this is all speculative on our parts, just kind of putting together pieces that we're hearing. We don't have, ear to the ground in the paddock. Wish we did.
I wish.
But not yet.
You know what this reminds me of? It's that meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Charlie has like the detective boards and he's like,
yes,
like trying to figure it out. It's like, I've connected 2 things. You haven't connected shit. I've connected them. That's what I feel like right now.
Yes, exactly.
It's like we haven't connected anything, but no, we have. Look at this. 2 things.
The pieces line up, okay?
So yeah, there's a lot that's going on with Aero McLaren, as always, which causes me headaches.
Yes. I am not getting attached to another driver in the number 6 car. It hasn't worked out yet.
Nope.
I will say Teddy Porkchop is being linked to quite a few teams, so hopefully this isn't going to be the last time that we see him in the world of IndyCar.
Yeah. I mean, he's
Yeah.
proven himself in the races that he's driven. He is a very capable driver, and all of his success in F2 as well. It just reminds me a lot of Marcus Armstrong. Like his success in F2 being translated into IndyCar, I think he would do phenomenally well in a stable car. Like having consistency there. And I would love to see him back. So hopefully we see him again and we will be supportive of him regardless of where he goes.
The only other kind of gossip news, I guess, for lack of a better term, is not really related to IndyCar directly, but
It has ramifications within
it
Indy.
it has connections to it. So, for those who follow the world of Formula One, and we won't spend too long on this because we are not a Formula One podcast, but FIA, their governing body, announced that they are going to make an exception to their 18 or older rule for super licenses. So, have amended their rules for the super licenses to allow Kimi Antonelli to drive as a 17-year-old. For those who aren't familiar, and I haven't been following him super closely, but he is a current driver for Prema in F2. He's supposed to kind of be the next, young prodigy coming through the series. He's a Mercedes driver, and they are especially very keen to get him into F1 as quickly as possible. Kid turns 18 in August, so I don't know what really the push is to get him into the series so much faster. But the connection to IndyCar is that they're making an exception to this rule that they had in place since Max Verstappen came in as the youngest driver in the sport at 17, and they said, hey, we're not doing this ever again. Last year, Colton Herta, well, I guess 2 years ago, Colton Herta was in line to take the AlphaTauri, now Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, whatever the heck their name might be, was set to take that AlphaTauri seat that was later filled by Nick DeVries. Because of the way the point system works, it really feeds into the F3, F2 feeder series to get the points to be able to get a super license. Does not help out IndyCar in any real way. Colton didn't get the exception, despite being a proven winner, despite proving that he can drive in one of these elite series. Similarly, Pato O'Ward, when he was a Red Bull Junior driver, had a Formula One contract lined up to go into F1, but couldn't get the points for a super license because these feeder series outside of F3, F2, everything do not allow for them to get enough points. And it's really see this happen, of this notion of okay, we're going to make an exception here, but these proven talents can't and probably won't ever, unless they were to win multiple races and win the whole IndyCar championship, will never get enough points to be able to transfer over to Formula One if they were to want that option.
I don't like the FAA as a governing body. I make it very well known, and I think they're incredibly inconsistent. They don't actually care about the drivers. All they care about is the money, and that is, again, I get it. That is the nature of motorsport, but it really bothers me when it's inconsistencies with rules that they themselves have created as a direct result of their own actions. I'm not saying that Kimi Antonelli is not going to be a successful driver. I think he's fine, but my confusion lies with he's not what Mercedes think that he is right now. And I think Rossi even tweeted about it being so exceptions can be made. And it's just why? Why? You have Colton, you have Pato, who are incredible drivers. Even Palou was struggling with some of the super license points and stuff, and he was dominant last year. Why are they making an exception for a kid who in F2 right now is not performing super well? You have other drivers in F2 who are consistently outperforming him, outscoring him, getting better points, more podiums. It just confuses me, especially you had mentioned he is turning 18 in August. So what is this push? What is going on behind the scenes to make that type of thing try to be expedited so fast? And then why are we not giving the opportunity to other drivers in other series? Pato had a Formula One contract. I knew he was a Red Bull Junior. I knew he had ties to the team and was on that track. I did not know he had an actual contract lined up. So I am going to bite a lot of my words. Because if I could have gotten Pato in an F1 car years ago, I would have been insufferable. But I think it really bothers me that drivers like Pato were blocked, like drivers like Colton were blocked, when the FIA seems to kind of be like, yeah, we'll make exceptions. We're not going to tell you when, though, and we're not going to tell you for who. It's just going to be whoever we so feel like it. Like, when you have those proven drivers, why are you not giving an exception? But for a kid who's turning 18 in a month and a half, 2 months, you're making an exception despite the fact that he's not really proven himself yet. I don't get it. And it really sucks because I know a lot of these drivers in Indy would love the opportunity to drive an F1. I mean, I would cry if I lost any of them to F1 because I just like seeing them in Indy. But, you know, that is the dream for so many of these drivers, is to be in F1 and to be a world champion in F1. So it's like, all right, you're kind of screwed if you don't go into like the Formula series of F4, F3, F2, where not everyone has the capability of doing that. So you have to do something that may be more accessible, like going through IndyCar, and then you're still screwed over. It really bothers me.
Well, and even, you know, Rossi drove in Formula One. He hasn't his feelings on how he feels about it. And it's just, I don't want to dwell too much on it because we're not a Formula One podcast, but it sucks. It's just, it's not supposed to be fair. That's not the right word for it, but there shouldn't be as much inconsistency as it should.
Like, I get the red tape that you put to kind of make it a little bit more challenging to get into it, sure. But like, have your rules and then keep to it. If you're making these rules to keep out certain series or certain drivers or whatever, stick with it. Like, don't just make a random exception just because you feel like it, or just because is there money involved? I don't know. So it's just like, all right, stick with your word, stick with your rules. You have a rule book for a reason.
I have 2 dumb questions this week. Neither of them are the technical variety, though. This is the Racing Thoughts part of Racing Thoughts, where let's just have fun with it. So, 2 questions.
Okay.
Of the Triple Crown, so Monaco, Indy 500, and Le Mans, for those who don't know, which of those 3 would you most want to win?
To win?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, okay. I might go with Monaco.
Why?
Because you get doused in champagne and not milk.
I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that.
You are in Indianapolis in end of May, and you mean to tell me I just went through all of those laps and I'm already gross, it's hot, I'm sweaty, and you want me to pour milk on myself and then not shower immediately after? Like, that's so gross. For the race itself, I think the 500 would be awesome. I think that's a really kind of fantastic combination of just really hard racing. Le Mans, I don't think I'd be able to stay awake for the full 24 hours. I am tired. But yeah, no, Monaco, I think, would be really fun to win, of just the spectacle that is Monaco itself. Like, I remember when I was in college and I had studied abroad, like, I went on a day trip to Monaco and it was just pure opulence. Like, it is so extra and it is beautiful. And then, like, you can go party on the yachts, go to Jimmy's, like, all the fun stuff that's there. But like, you win the 500, you pour milk on yourself and you're in Indiana. You're in Indianapolis. So that, for me, is it directly related to racing reasons? No, not at all. I think any of them would be fun to win as a racer, but I just don't want to be covered in milk.
Interesting.
What about you? What would you do?
Mine is the 500 for the fact I think you see the reactions of the drivers, and I'm not going to try to quote it, but like, go watch the last episode of 100 Days to Indy in the last couple minutes. And there is a quote there of just talking about how, like, it's called the greatest spectacle in racing for a reason. And you look at how upset Pato O'Ward was for coming second in this race, and just, it means something that the others don't. And it's not saying they're not important, not that they don't matter, but like Monaco is one of 24 races. And quite honestly, I think it's boring. I don't particularly care for the Monaco race. Yes, it's historic, whatever. Like the Indy 500, you know, kissing the bricks, getting doused in milk. Yes, it's gross, but like that's the only time you get that. You get the laurel wreath. Like it just, that race clearly means something in a way that doesn't have words. And, you know, it's a race that it owes you nothing, but it means everything. And so I think out of the three, yeah, it's the one that I would want to be able to have that crown, because it's you can have IndyCar championships, and of course that's a huge deal. But if you haven't won the 500, I mean, it's the 500.
I mean, like, I agree with you. I think the 500 as a race is probably the best race out of the three. But I do see what you're saying. Like, the 500 is the greatest spectacle in racing. I think it's one of the greatest races to ever watch. So, agreed. But just don't want to be covered in milk, personally.
All right, second question.
Okay.
A lot sillier. You're planning a heist. Which of the driver or drivers would you choose as your partner in crime?
Ooh, okay.
I can go first if you need to think on it.
So, I have a couple clarifying questions.
Okay.
So first question, do I have a limit on how many drivers I can rope into my heist?
I have 2 on mine, so I'm going to give you a limit of 2.
Okay, limit of 2. Does it matter what kind of heist? Like, are we talking like an art heist? Are we talking jewelry? Are we just talking like I'm robbing the royal family or what?
Whatever came to mind first. Free game.
Okay. All right, go for it. You tell me, because I'm very interested and I need to look something up in order to give you a good answer.
Okay, so I picked Colton Herta and Alexander Rossi. 2 reasons.
Okay.
One, Colton just seems like he's very chill, he's
Mhm.
quiet. Like, I don't feel like I need to worry about him, like, squealing. Like, you know, he also just kind of seems like he's gonna get the job done. May or may not ask a lot of questions. Like, it's just gonna get done. It's gonna get done well. So that's why I'm going with Colton.
Okay.
Rossi, so learned recently that at the 500, all these drivers do tons and tons of pranks on each other.
Oh my god, I didn't think.
There was a prank a few years ago where Connor Daly had Orbeez put into his hot tub. Tons and tons and tons of them put into his hot tub. He couldn't figure out who it was. Like, he's questioning everybody. Everyone's just like, oh no, it's not me. Own up to it. Rossi was with him that whole weekend, kept being like, oh yeah, this is so weird. Don't know who it is. And then later, because people had somehow calculated that it must be like 400,000 Orbeez that were put into his hot tub, Alex Rossi posts the receipt on his Twitter of it was 1.7 million Orbeez put into this man's hot tub, and it took like ages. And the only reason that anyone found out is because Alex Rossi wanted to take credit for his crime.
Yeah,
I appreciate this idea.
Yeah, he said someone else trying to take my credit. Absolutely not. I can appreciate that.
Rossi sounds like an idea man. I need an idea man. Like, I will execute things very well all day, but I need someone to come up with the initial idea for me.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing is I had immediately thought of like the Isabella Gardner Museum art heist that happened. It's like super famous in Boston. All of a sudden, like just this really important painting just gone from the museum and no one knows. It has been like 30 years and it's still just like one of the greatest mysteries that's happened in Boston. So I immediately went to that and like I just think about who I would need elsewhere in the heist. So my mind immediately went to paddock because he can charm the pants off of anybody and just serve as a great distraction.
Yep.
If you're talking to him, he's probably going to be talking your ear off that you're not going to realize what else is happening around you. So I think he's a great distraction. And yeah, so I think of that. Paddock's my distraction. He's my bait that's there. And then you make a really good point about Rossi, but I think I might go with actually Joseph.
Okay, elaborate.
Because we joke around all the time that he is like a G.I. Joe doll. And so I just haven't.
He's a real life action figure.
He is.
Look at that man.
So, like, he's incredibly capable of doing, like, all the things that you need, like, physically wise in order to do things. Plus, I would have him carry everything out. Like, I'm not carrying, like, priceless artwork. No, thank you. That's all on you, babes. So, he would do all the physical stuff that's there. But I also think, in a very similar sense to Rossi, I feel like he has the ability to execute a plan very well. And, like, I don't know how he would do necessarily, maybe on, like, oh, if something were to deviate from the plan, but, like, that's where teacher brain comes into play, adapt, overcome. And I feel like if you were to give him those instructions, is like, all right, this has gone off plan, this is what we're doing now, he will follow without hesitation. Yeah, I think he just needs the plan in order to execute it, and I stand by my G.I. Joe. I'm gonna take Pato and Joseph.
I mean, between the 6 of us, what a crew.
What a crew. This is gonna be our Ocean's 11.
Okay, so all I have left is a preview of our upcoming race this weekend. Laguna Seca, it seems to be a bit of a crowd favorite between drivers. Firestone Grand Prix of Monterey, I think is its official title. Scott Dixon won last year. It is another road course. I'm a big fan of road courses, so pretty pleased with this. 95 laps, 2.238 mile laps, 11 turns, featuring the famous corkscrew between turn 8 and turn 9, or 8 and 8A, I think is what it's officially labeled as.
Yep.
Random fun fact, Laguna Seca is Spanish for dry lake, and hence gets its name because there used to be a lake there. It has dried up, and that is where the racetrack is today.
That is actually really cool that they're using it as a racetrack. So I'm excited. I didn't watch Laguna Seca last year, so I have no idea what to expect from this. So next week's recap should be fun because I will have learned a whole lot.
It's a late race just because of timings. So first practice, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday. 1 p.m. on Saturday is practice 2 for IndyCar. Qualifying starts at 5:15 p.m., which I will not be watching because I have another wedding to go to this weekend. And then the race is 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday.
Well, it'll be an interesting weekend. I'm also going to be watching the race on delay because I will be coming back from New York City on Sunday from a baby shower. So I will be stuck on a train. I guess I'll watch it probably on Monday. Who you got for your podium predictions?
Honestly, forgot to give that one any thought. I don't know.
I mean, it's the first race that we have David Malukas back at, right?
It is. I want little Dave to do very, very well. I don't know if that'll be a podium. I don't know really what that car is going to look like. I don't know what it's going to look like him driving truly for the first time in a year, but yeah. I have high hopes. I kind of want Colton Herta to have a really good weekend. Mm-hmm. He's had such a good car for the last 3 races and just nothing to show of it. So I guess Colton, David, and then give me Pato. He can do something good. Meg, what's your podium predictions?
Gonna surprise absolutely nobody with this one. Pato, Rossi, Kyle. I'm gonna keep saying it till it comes true. I want to see Pato fully win, like actually have a podium celebration win. I want, obviously, Rossi to do well. I think he needs some sort of kind of like positive momentum in order to just kind of like keep his spirits up and stuff. And plus, he's got his contract extension. So I feel like having a really good weekend would be kind of beneficial for that. And then Kyle, he's had such good races. I think the same as with Colton. He's had a really good car. He's had really good strategy. He's just gotten very unlucky. So I'm going to keep saying it till I get Pato, Rossi, Kyle on my podium.
The Spotter's Guide has also just gone live, and I'm excited to report after my complaints from last week. The people at Penske have heard me, and we have the return of the meat wagon.
Ah, yes. Oh, man. Thank God the meat wagon is back. Yeah, life was really poor quality without the meat wagon around for a while. Yep. We'll post the Spotter's Guide on our Instagram as well in case anybody needs it, because it truly is incredibly helpful. That's that.
All right. I think that wraps us up for episode 4.
Absolutely.
Follow the podcast on Instagram at Racing Thoughts Podcast. Like, give us stars, whatever. Share with your friends, get us out to other people. I don't know. Go comment an emoji on our latest Instagram post if you've made it to this point.
We will see you guys next week with our race recap and more to come.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.